Hello. Welcome to Season XV of the Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, we're watching movies from the 90s and talking about how they fit into the larger picture of 90s horror and how each year from that decade stacks up against the others. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode. So speaking of Bill Clinton, here we are back with another episode of reviewing horror movies of the 1990s. The 90s have a bad reputation in the history of horror for being mostly remakes and sequels that are just kind of low quality, low budget, direct-to-video, cash grab type things. Mm-hmm. So the whole point of this season, which is Season XV, is to go back and re-examine horror movies from the 90s that don't fall into those categories and see what they have to offer. There's been some up and down.
Well, it's the ups are always, it's just nice to remember the 90s for me. It was an easier time.
Because you didn't have a mortgage?
No mortgage. The internet was barely a thing. You know, like us people, to poor people.
Life did feel just less complicated at the time. I feel like even for our parents it was,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
yeah.
Anyway. We're back. This is the second week of us talking about movies from 1995. Next week, we'll move on to 1996. But first, we decided to watch and review The Fear. And I, for whatever reason, vividly remember the movie poster for this. I must have seen it on a VHS jacket at the rental store or something. Mm-hmm. But did you have any previous connection with this one?
I had none.
Cool.
Zero. Zilch. I had nothing. I didn't know anything going in, man. I swear.
Well, good. Then it was a brand new experience for both of us, and I'm excited to talk to you about it. Did you have any fun facts for this one?
No. Mm-mm. Not because I didn't try.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there really wasn't a lot about this. And I was kind of interested. I really wanted to know more about, kind of who funded this and... everything.
Which terrorist group funded this fucking movie? Just kidding.
Because it really was a unique and weird movie.
Yeah.
But there just wasn't a lot of information on the internet. So, yeah. Anyway. Well, cool. Then I'll just do a quick introduction and then we can get into just because Adam Duritz had that hair doesn't mean you can, Troy, details. In 1995, the movie The Fear was released. This supernatural psychological horror film was written by Ron Ford and directed by Vincent Robert. It tells the story of a weekend retreat gone awry when a psychology grad student named Richard arranges a deep exploration of fear at his family's cabin in the woods as the subject for his thesis. It's all fun and games until the truth of Richard's past emerges at the hands of a possessed human-sized wooden mannequin. Yep, you heard me right. This movie can currently be streamed for free with ads on Tubi.
And honestly, it's 3 ads. It's not much.
Yeah, they really don't make you work for it.
No, they really don't.
Yeah. This movie, to me, I feel was made very much like a soap opera. I feel like I can sum up the movie making of, if you think about kind of a 90s soap opera, it's got a little bit of that faded color, kind of generic dramatic music, a little bit of overacting, it just, that's what you're dealing with here.
Without a doubt. Adding to that statement, though, it's like a soap opera with all of a sudden just a gnarly horror scene coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
That you don't expect. Blew my mind, man. I legit at one time was like, is this Days of Life? And then of Our Lives? And then I was like, no, this is definitely not Days of Our Lives. There's boobies. That kind of thing,
And murder. I guess that maybe wasn't Days of Our Lives.
Probably.
But anyway.
Yeah.
Probably not as graphic. Mm-mm. So I was kind of intrigued because Wes Craven was actually in this as an actor, but as far as I could tell, he didn't actually have anything to do with the writing or directing or anything. So I'm curious how they got him to just kind of show up for a couple of scenes.
I have my theories.
I'd like to hear him.
Gambling addiction. He needed money to pay off the bookies. I think that's why Walter Matthau did Dennis the Menace.
I'd believe it.
Then I just assume any old dude who does movies that they shouldn't be in. It's just like, you have a gambling addiction, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. So Wes Craven aside, and his addictions aside, there were a number of interesting casting choices for this one. For example, Leslie and Troy were supposed to be brother and sister in the movie, but the actress who played Leslie was born in 1946, and the actor who played Troy was born in 1967. So I feel like they were trying to cast Leslie as a lot younger than she was, but like she was supposed to be young with a fear of getting old, whereas she was just old.
Right. And at one time, because I was pretty confused while watching this, I actually thought early on, like when they were like heading to that house, that they were saying that she was his mom based off of her age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really...
Yeah.
There was a lot about the relationships between the characters that was just really hard to understand. Mm-hmm. Because they didn't really introduce everybody or establish how they knew each other or why they were there. And so you just kind of had to accept it, which was fine once you figured out that that's what was going on. It was just confusing to start the movie.
Yeah. Once they got there, it started to definitely make a little bit more sense. Just getting there took a minute. Yeah. Yet again, I don't really know what was trying to be accomplished in this, except for some gnarly horror scenes. That's all I got.
Yeah, the story was somewhat weak, and the movie making was interesting. Like, this is definitely a 90s movie, and if you need any proof of that, just look at Troy, who is like the token 90s character. Like, he could have you could have just transplanted him to being one of the bad guys in The Crow, or like the creepy guy that gave someone a ride in Rumpelstiltskin or something. You know, like he could have just been, he was going to be that dude, because every 90s movie needed that dude if they didn't have a kid sidekick. So he was in this one, and kind of unnecessarily, like, it didn't really make sense to me that Richard and Troy would be friends, given that they were completely opposite characters and everything else. But yeah, overall, if you can get past all of that, I do feel like this movie was interesting and worth watching, just because it used elements from a lot of different like types of horror, and it created some really legitimately creepy and scary scenes.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Like, and honestly, like, yeah, the story wasn't great, but like I'll still watch this movie again. Like, I know it doesn't have that high of a rating or anything like that. So if you are a ratings whore, you probably aren't going to watch this, but like, the soap opera scenes weren't that bad, and the horror scenes made up for it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I mean, this movie has terrible average ratings, but I thought it was better than Rumpelstiltskin, and I didn't hate Rumpelstiltskin.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah. So. Yeah. I felt like this one was pretty gnarly. Maybe it was just because the wooden guy was my fear in real life or something. I don't know. But
the eyes.
I do think that 100%. And because they were real goddamn eyes.
Yes.
I'm still stuck on this, dude.
And the way that they would like occasionally blink, like early on in the movie, before you were supposed to know it was alive, it was just like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah. The thing though that I think is really important for people to understand is how important the stereotypical characters were in the 90s, like for the dreadlock Troy character. Mm-hmm. As soon as you see that, it's like, yep, this is the 90s. Like, as soon as you have a character like that, it's like, yep, they can get away with it still.
It was also funny to me that Troy had to have packed like 8 suitcases worth of clothes, because in every scene it was like he was wearing this entirely different, entirely ridiculous outfit with like 12 layers, you know?
Yeah. Surprised he didn't have like Jinko jeans on, honestly.
Right.
Just like one of those. You know, that's a really important piece of it, but legitimately, like, watching this film, I don't know 100% what it was about because it just went straight into it. The second I saw that one character, like, once they kind of like stumble upon him when they all got to the house, I was like, oh shit, okay,
It's on.
Here we go. And I'm watching it alone, and you know, our back door doesn't have anything blocking, like, because we have a whole bunch of window, like tiny windows, where those are called, on the back one, and all I was doing was waiting to see that motherfucking face. And I was like, I'm about to start swinging on something. I know I'm hearing it. I'm going to see this dude staring at me through this little window. And I've never felt like that since I moved here back in 18. And so, man, mission accomplished, the fear.
Well, yeah, and I feel like this one was definitely influenced by kind of the tropes of a lot of different horror subgenres. Like the whole idea of, I'm bringing everyone to a creepy house to spend the weekend, and there's all these people who maybe don't know each other super well. That feels very much like the setup to basically every haunted house movie that we watched.
Yeah.
And then, well, either that or they inherit it, but yeah.
That's true.
And then the idea of them kind of getting picked off one by one was a lot more like slashery, you know, like that definitely had more of a feel of kind of like the late 70s or early 80s slasher type movies. But I think there was definitely like a psychological element to this one as well. And the way that it started with sort of him in a therapy session, and then the whole thing was like a psychological exploration of fear, kind of added that element of not being sure what was real or what was in your imagination. And some of the stuff with Morty, the wooden mannequin, it could have been 100% explained by just other people in the house moving him around or doing stuff. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of, for a while, had that balance of, is this even actually happening? Or is this just an environment where everyone is kind of on edge because of the reason they're there in the first place? And now this is how it's manifesting itself.
Yeah. Yeah, because the way they set like Morty up, like early on, was like he was just propped up against the window looking through kind of thing. Like it didn't look like he was like he had done it, which was even more kind of creepy. Because then I don't know that guy's name that hurt his arm and it was wrapped up. I think it started with a G.
Vance.
It was not even close to a G. Like I thought it was that doucher the whole time. I was like, if it's this dude,
it would have been too obvious, I think,
because he was a bad seed, you know. Like he was bad.
Set up that way from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, throw you off. That's a good point, because they were getting paid to be there, right?
I guess I don't really know, and that was one of the things that I felt like was really unclear. Like there were some of the people there, like everyone seemed to know each other, but they didn't really explain like why some of them would have been participating in the experiment in the first place. Like the guy who was really religious seemed like opposed to everything about it, but he also went there, and I don't know, it was just strange.
Well, see, that's something we kind of touched base on a couple seasons ago. Like, you know, maybe it was when we were doing the haunted house section, but it was like, why are they there? Kind of thing. Like, how did they get there? And like,
why can't they leave?
Yeah, and you start to realize like that's an incredibly important, you know.
Right, the whole thing kind of breaks down without it.
Yeah, like how isolated is this house? Like, could they just go to the neighbor's house and be like, "Yo, I'll pay you $50 if you drive me to town to get me out of here," whatever. But yeah, I think those are some things that could have been done that could have probably helped out a little bit with this, the non-horror writing pieces of it.
Yeah,
maybe just like ready. Maybe they were just like, we got these horror scenes, we just need to fill in the extra. And they're like, all right, what do you got? And it's like, how about Richard is like super sweet and a dickhead in the same sentence to his like, was she fiance?
Yeah.
Like it's just those were confusing, but like, yeah, anytime I saw that wooden dickhead, She's like, this is not going to be good.
Yeah.
And so the guy saw this, all his bad dreams came from like him walking in, him telling on his mom for having an affair, and his dad coming in and then killing her, and then himself, right?
Yeah.
Or and then
no,
but
not
the
himself.
guy. Oh. Well, but then the guy who she was banging was the older dude,
The uncle.
who set all this shit up.
Yes.
And I assume it was like her husband's brother. And that's a legit question because old Troy was about to bang his mom / sister in one of the scenes.
Yes.
What was this movie about? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So the thing
freaky families.
The thing I had in my notes was that some parts of the movie were good psychological horror, like Morty showing up in scary places and seemingly combining that with a person who was already trying to face their own fear. So there was that scene where the uncle's girlfriend was trying to get in the hot tub, but she was scared of water. And then she was like, trying to figure out if she was going to go in or not. And then she finally does. And then Morty pops up from under the water. And it was like, the scene was already intense because you knew she was like dealing with trying to overcome her fear. And then the kind of the jump scare with the creepy mannequin happens. And it's like, okay, that's good. That got me. That was interesting. But then there were parts of the movie that they couldn't be good psychological horror because they just didn't make any damn sense. And like when Troy kissed his sister and then she says she can't do it and says it's only that they're only brother and sister, or he says that they're only brother and sister because someone adopted them. And then she's like, well, she didn't adopt us. She owned us. But then she keeps talking. And I think you find out she was actually his mom. But I didn't really understand that scene.
No, that's exactly what happened.
And then she walks out and then like she finds Troy's jacket on Morty and then she turns old because that's what she was the most afraid of every time. But I don't really know what that has to do with the old woman that she was talking about before that was supposed to be the scary person. And trying to type notes about this didn't make any damn sense.
Listen, I got this. Don't worry. Her fear was getting old. So that's why she got old. I think she said that she was like only 14 or something when she had him. But she said, we can't do this anymore. So that tells me something freaky was going on with that. But also, if your fear's getting older, no offense, you're just dumb. Like, there's no stopping it.
Here's my counterpoint. Yeah. On the other side of the coin, if you're not scared of getting old, you're dumb. Because it's coming for all of us. That's a real thing to be concerned about.
No, I say just let it happen. It's going to happen regardless. I think is the thing. Like for me, if like say heights are my, I'm the scared. That's the thing that scares me the most. I just won't go up high. Like you don't have to. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You have to get old. It just happens. You should just prepare for it by jogging in your 30s. You can drink as much as you want and eat whatever you want as long as you jog at least half a mile in your 30s once.
Yeah. One and done. That's why they made the phrase.
Look at me, man. I'm in peak physical shape. But seriously, like fear of getting older is so she just gets old and dies. That's like the easiest way to die. Like that's what old people want to die by, right? Just like old age.
Yeah. I mean, it beats the alternatives.
Yeah. You just like fall asleep and then you don't wake up. It's way better than freezing to death. Or
drowning. I'm scared of that one.
Oh, God, dude. Don't even get me started on drowning.
But that one was, I feel like that whole storyline didn't need to happen. That could have been totally cut out. Like, I didn't need to be confused and taken out of the moment by the whatever they were trying to accomplish there.
I would argue that that she didn't even need to be in it at all.
Yeah, I agree.
Just wasting up time. You're making time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
But then I think probably the best part of the movie was when Mindy was like possessed by Morty and was chasing Richard around the house. That I thought was super creepy and a really good kind of payoff, like crescendo of the movie. And the way that they kind of worked that in with him, and he's understanding what happened in his past and everything else, that was kind of a cool I guess, psychological, but also possession, paranormal type ending. Mm-hmm. So overall, I just keep coming back to it. I think the thing with this one is that the story didn't make sense, and the movie was at its worst when it was trying to develop whatever overly complex storyline was supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. But it still delivered a lot of good horror moments, and that was really by leveraging some of the best things about different subgenres of horror movies. Mm-hmm. And so compared to a lot of other movies that we've watched recently, this one really stood out to me in that it's like it was trying to get creative with a lot of different types of horror inspiration. And I think that makes it worth watching. And especially so because it did it all sort of within the bounds of its like budget and what it could do. Like it was not super expensive, I wouldn't imagine, to dress a guy up in a wooden costume.
No.
A wooden looking costume. And like the scene where they had Gerald crucified at Santa's village, that was really gnarly and convincing looking, but it wasn't like it was a really technical visual effects thing to pull off, you know? And so I just thought overall it was a much better made movie than it was written.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess if I were to reiterate, it would be like if I read the book, any of the Lord of the Rings books, and then made a movie about it, but you hadn't read the book and you don't know what the hell's going on. Yeah. And I'm saying me making it because like I'm all over the place, man. So I'm like, oh yeah, we got to add this conversation. We got to add this. So I know what's happening. So I'm watching. It's like, well, that makes sense. I read the book. You haven't read the book. Not all viewers have read the damn books.
Yeah.
I haven't even seen it, but I'm just saying that's what it felt like to me. And then you get to these horror scenes and they're just like a student of, you know, like they're just like, that's their specialty, you know? And sometimes you got to set up the non-horror scenes for the horror scenes. In this case, I didn't necessarily have to. And so much so that my final note was this would be a good movie for you, Daniel, to edit into a way that makes sense to make those horror scenes legit. Kind of like how you edit albums for me, where you're like, this is the order it should be in. Yeah. Like it makes more sense. That's the same concept. It's just these scenes are kind of all over the place. Yeah. If you get past that, the meat of it, pretty good, Dan.
Yeah. A lot of good material, for sure. And like you said, I will probably watch this one again. And that's the thing that I've only thought about a few of the ones we've done this season.
Yeah, same. And it's on Tubi too, so we should watch as much as we want.
Yeah. So that wraps up our discussion of the two movies that we watched in 1995, which means we're now on to the rankings.
Ooh, yes.
And so previously, where we ended up with the movies from 1990 through 1994, we decided that 1991 was our favorite, with People Under the Stairs, Silence of the Lambs, Dead Space, and Ernest Scared Stupid. We decided number 2 was 1990 with It, Jacob's Ladder, and Arachnophobia. 1992 with Man Bites Dog, Lawnmower Man, Candyman, and Ghostwatch. 94 with The Crow and In the Mouth of Madness. 93 with Doppelganger, Leprechaun, Kronos, and Nightmare Before Christmas. And now we're on to 1995 with Rumpelstiltskin and The Fear. So I want to start things off by saying I think I would put Rumpelstiltskin and The Fear above Doppelganger and Leprechaun.
Agreed.
Okay, so the question I have is, do Rumpelstiltskin and The Fear trump The Crow and In the Mouth of Madness?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's hard because I feel like The Crow was better than either of them, but I feel like I kind of liked both better than In the Mouth of Madness.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't going to do this.
Okay.
Because people are going to get mad.
Uh-oh.
They're going to be in our mentions.
Oh, God.
About to get ratioed.
Shoot.
There was one other movie that we have previously reviewed that came out in 1995. Do you remember what that movie was? It was from a season where we said we're going to do whatever the hell we want.
From 95?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. What was it?
The Quick and the Dead.
Ah, son of a bitch. Okay. 95 win.
Yeah. Kind of had a feeling.
Wins.
Kind of had a feeling.
Gosh.
Yeah.
If it was any other, I could have argued against it.
Yep.
I just watched The Quick and the Dead this weekend, man, while I was working in the garage.
It's a classic. It's absolutely a classic. And go back to season whatever, probably 11-ish, 10, probably 11 or 12, maybe 9. Anyway, we did a review of a bunch of movies that are not like strictly in the horror genre, but have horror elements. And that was one of them, and I'll stand by that to my grave. Yep. So we are officially placing 1995 after 1992, but before 1994 in our rankings.
Yep.
The final ranks.
I'm glad you did that, man, because I was about to tie it out. And you know I hate ties.
Me too. Someone I was only going to play that card if that's what was about to happen. So
yeah, I'm glad you did.
91's in number 1. 1990 is in 2. 92 is in 3. 95. This is the most ridiculous thing. No, those numbers don't make sense. 1991 is the leader. 1993 is the loser overall. The others are somewhere in between. We'll be back next week to talk about the first movie from 96.
Goodbye. Farewell. Out of Easter saying good night.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com or hit us up on the IG. That's what the kids call Instagram. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.
You know what's an unrational fear I've had lately? Do you want to hear it? Yeah. But also, I've had this weird fear ever since that they've said they were going to release the names on the Epstein list that my name was on there for some reason. I don't even make enough in a decade to be part of that. But I've had this weird, every time I see it, I feel like I'm almost like I'm in trouble. Like, oh God, it's going to get out. And it's like, what's going to get out, dude? Yeah. I swear to, I don't know. My brain's weird, but
Epstein wouldn't hire me as help. We just run in very different social circles.
You just hire the guy who's about to fucking swing his way off this island. Yeah, finds out all you guys are diddling kids. Like, fuck this. But yeah, dude, that's been a weird thing.
My condolences. I didn't realize you've been so stressed out.
Oh God, that's what are they? It was like, wait, what? Yeah.
I hope nobody sees my name on the list of associates of a guy I never associated with.
Like all this shit was going on before I think it was even born too, you know? Yeah. So it's like, why would I even? Yeah.
You weren't even old enough to vote for Clinton.